Theora. Welcome to
Hello.
the show.
Hi.
Oh, I'm so excited to connect with you. We've been chatting, we've been having mic issues, but we're here, we're now in the present. And I'm so excited to chat to you because you are shining your light. I think I messaged you the other day just being like, you are like in my face on the screen and we're across the world, but I'm hearing everything that you're laying down right now and it's absolute fire. And there's so much in which we can go into today, but how are you showing up today? How are you?
Ooh, I'm good, nourished, excited. I love that your flow is more improvised. So there's also a little bit of like nerves, but yeah, feel just like good. And I think we're gonna uncover some magical stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I met you earlier this year when we went to Yoga of Intimacy with London and Justin, who have been on the show before, and we've spoken about this. And what I really loved about kind of reflecting on that course, the women that were in that course with us, was that we were all very similar in the fact that we were badass, empowered women in the world that want to do big things. And I reflect on that a lot, that it kind of attracted that caliber of women, that we all kind of found it hard to let go of control and to not want to show our full self and not want to struggle with Omega or the feminine energy. So how have you been navigating that? Like how is you showing up as this empowered, badass woman in the world that wants to build an empire and shout from the rooftops and share your heart, to be in your heart and be connected to Omega?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, because when I first started working with London and Justin, like even just when I got exposure to like masculine, feminine energy, right? I kind of started creating a new box to put myself in of like, oh, I need to be more feminine. I need to be more feminine. And then over time, as like whenever we practice anything, integration starts to happen when we're intentional about it. And so I think that's where I'm at now, where I've started sort of practicing that integration of what is it actually like to embrace my alpha, and really like what are the strong suits of that version of me, those versions of me, like where do they thrive, what do they need, and then also like what does Omega bring to the table? What does she need from me? How does she thrive? And then is really I think a commitment to serve both of those parts of me and really acknowledge like what are their strengths, and without judgment, you know. So I know for me, well, I don't know if I need to go, like my alpha is awesome, like runs a business, like gets shit done. And that's a beautiful, beautiful version of me. My alpha doesn't feel a lot. Right. And so I've just become a lot more present to my emotional landscape. Long story short is it's like a self-reclamation, and
Yes.
and like really coming present to and honoring and loving like the divine union within myself.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that's also allowed me to really figure out like what is my spectrum versus what is it. I think there's a lot of prescription out there of like what femininity looks and feels like, what masculinity looks and feels like. And when we start to speak this language, we can go to perform or mimic what we've seen externally versus what actually originates within us, that comes from our own soul signature. So I feel a lot more in touch after a few years of playing with it and just being committed to understanding those elements of myself.
Yeah, I love that, because even what I was mentioning earlier, I think for me, it feels like it's had to go on each end of the pendulum swing to get the full spectrum of what was a mask, what wasn't true, what was inauthentic, to even like the alpha authenticity that was coming through, right? And then the feminine inauthenticity, and then finding my way through that to find my soul signature. I love that you said it like that, because it looks different and feels different to anyone else, you know, my own unique range. And I think it's good that people can we can put words to it or articulate it in a certain way by calling it like alpha and omega or masculine and feminine, to give people the idea of where to go, because it gave me direction of what I needed to look at. but it's taken the full spectrum of like the extremities to then find the dance of what that means to me. So I love that you said that. Oh, and so how has this started to navigate in your work when you work with people? Because for work, you help women, right? Women
Mm-hmm.
and men, or just women?
Women.
Women navigate dating.
Yes.
And love.
Yeah.
And finding epic love.
Yes, specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is epic love?
Oh my God, what is epic love? I should come up with like a lovely little soundbite for this, but I think of epic love as like the love that's fully expressed, where growth is really built into it, fulfillment is built into it, longevity is built into it. The way that it's experienced in real terms is like the honeymoon that doesn't end, like the honeymoon period that doesn't. It's like taking the honeymoon and taking it out of like phase category, and specifically working with women who have who have been very activated in their alpha. That's why they're so successful. That's why they've created the amazing lives they've created. That's why they're the leaders of teams and companies, etc. And is like pulling them out of this assumption that their success disqualifies them from the happily ever after that's actually real. And I'm not like promoting these like Disney level or like rom-com-esque fairy tales. It's about like, it's one of my little catchphrases is like, Disney didn't create the fairy tale, it just built an empire on it. And it's because I think that there's actually something deep within us where we want to be fully seen, fully known, and fully loved by another person who we also get to fully see, fully know, and fully love. And for some reason, well, not for some reason, I know why, but the like recycled story socially is that there's like an accidental few who win that lottery, and then the rest of us get to have either no relationship, like single and happy, or we get to settle for a mediocre relationship that's really hard and unfulfilling, divorce, yada yada yada. And so and so as I ventured down this path of the energies, I saw there was so much work out there to support partners, but I wasn't in a partnership at the time. And so I was like, well, I don't have my partner to practice this esoteric tantric shit with, but, oh, can I swear?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. I was like, oops. And so then I started looking into the dating world. And I really just saw very tactical, like text this. It feels like a descendant of like pickup artistry, really. Just kind of like repackaged for women. And so it was either that, or it was like the reason that men don't approach you is because you haven't tapped into your feminine's like soft femininity or something. And it was just this very one note expression of omega, right? Of a femininity. And I like, yes, I have that tender, sweet, small version of me in here sometimes, but usually my omega is a lot more like charming and flirtatious, and she's a little bit more electric and more fiery. Sometimes she's a fucking hurricane, like, and so I just like didn't feel seen out in the world. And so I started sort of like reverse engineering these things and experimenting with them, guinea pigging my own self and on the people in my life, and then started to see these radical results for people in partnership, outside of partnership. And then, from there, it's sort of been like a 3-year rabbit hole. But it was absolutely exposure to like the terminology of masculine, feminine energy. I was like, what are you talking about? Because I'd only ever heard masculine to describe like manliness and like feminine to describe womanliness. And so like when I had my eyes open to this new paradigm, I really got to kind of like start to like build a new cathedral, right? Of what does it look like in the era of self-creation, right? Like we were talking about this before we started recording, but we're in this era of empowerment where we like being like the agent and the engineer of your life is becoming popularized, right? Like mindset work is popularized, manifesting, like everybody and their uncle uses manifestation and believes in it to some degree, even the cynics, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, they'll even poke fun at it, like in one's breath, and then the next breath be like, oh yeah, like I manifested this. So like, it's becoming popularized, and I just couldn't believe that like dating was the one area of life that we couldn't bring this same like magic and mindset and intentionality to, and not be able to influence in like a really impactful and predictable way.
Yeah, like we were talking about, you hear a lot, love will come to you when you least expect it. And we were saying how we were like, we don't say that stuff about our health or our business or our wealth or our financial, stability. Like why do we say that about dating?
Yeah, I think dating, it's sort of the final frontier of personal development. Ooh, I might burp. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. Okay. Dating. Oh, the reason is because the two primal fears that run human at the like synaptic nervous system level is, am I worthy? And most of us think we're not. And so therefore, am I lovable? And most of us think we're not, or we're afraid we're not, right? And so if we start to bring this intentionality into love, right? Like, we really have to tango with those primal fears. And so usually, yeah, like fear, it really diminishes curiosity. And so I think that's why we're so far behind the curve. And part of it is, in love, the only model, oh my God, I could go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
The only model we have of love working out thus far has been people stumbling into it for the most part. That's the only model we've had. We're moving into an era now where like that model is really going to shift. You were even talking a little bit about like looking around your reality and not seeing relationships that are models for you. That's because you're actually going to have to create what you really want.
And this is so interesting because and I've been sitting in this a lot as I'm playing in the dating field right now, of like listening to other people and then really having like a self inventory check in, like, okay, well, where is in my life, where are relationships that I look up to that I know is like what I want to get into? And I was like, shit, there is none. Like, there's no one in my life that I know intimately that I kind of can understand what goes on in their relationship, or that I've known growing up where that's what I model. Like, there's no one. And so I'm literally forming a new model of what relationship looks like and standard of what that looks like. And that's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because then you literally tango with all the fears and all of the, wait, am I being too much of a high standard, which people say that I am? And should I filter myself, which people say that I should do? Like, it's like, who am I being discerning about, what advice I'm listening to, who I'm listening to, who I'm being reflected by? Like, where do you draw that line? So what is it like to create your own model of relationship?
Like you said, it's challenging. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a great question. What it's okay. What it's like is you have to imagine what you haven't seen before. So one of the things is hodgepodge. So is going through, and instead of trying to find a whole package, because what you want is actually probably a greater expression than what most of humanity has experienced, which is exactly why you need to create it, is because we need to start creating the new paradigm. And so is to come from vision versus the circumstance. So almost everybody in love comes from circumstance. The current status quo is designed for settling. It's designed for average, which is why when you have this massive movement of people who are like self-creating businesses, revolutionizing their health, self-healing, are these like self-directed or like maybe co-creative with source, like wealth moguls, so you have this like huge wave of innovators, and my God, where was I going? Creating your new relationship.
Yeah. And then creating that new model, a new paradigm of love comes innovation.
Yeah, totally. So it's like there's this wave coming. If like your mission, should you choose to accept it, is like, would you like to be the vanguard of the new relationship model? And so much of it is coming from vision and like taking responsibility for clarity and showing up for that vision, not falling into the status quo, which perpetuates fear, settling, compromise. I don't mean like compromise, like co-created agreements. I mean compromise, like sacrificing, and like creating an energetic deficit in your partnership dynamic, right? But it's like coming from the vision and really showing up for that. The same way, like you don't know what your business is going to look like 3 years from now, but you have faith that it could look something like this, and you show up even though you don't know how the fuck to create that. Right? So like there's a lot of what I do, right, is really like translating a lot of these tools that we've implemented in other areas of our life, and then putting them through like an appropriate filter to then apply them to dating and relationship. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And how does this apply to your own self growth and expression? Like how does, like, to be able to create that and to facilitate that, what do you need to do today? Like who do you need to be today?
Ooh, that's a great question. So the very, very first thing is owning what you really want. And people be like, I know what I want. And then I've done, like hundreds of phone calls. Nobody has taken the time to actually get clear about what they want. So I know that sounds so basic. And yet, like, if you can't journal to me about it for 3 to 5 pages, you're not clear enough yet. So my encouragement is like, get really clear. And then the 3 areas, well, now 4 areas, it just like evolved it. The 4 areas to focus on is like, and we're very practiced at this one, which is like the partner. Like, who is this person? What do you admire about them? What is like, how do they show up for the world? What are the things you love to do with them? X, Y, or Z. And then the second is, what's your vision for the partnership? So what role does this partnership play for the planet? How does it contribute to the social fabric of humanity? What effect does it have on the people who get to experience it? When you walk into a room, what do people see when the 2 of you are together? What do your friends say about, right? So you can start to really paint a picture because, well, okay, we'll get on there in a second. And then the third is, and then who are you as a partner? What's the version of you that you evolve into in service to this partnership, that this partnership calls you forth to being? Because if you don't have a commitment with who you're going to be, like if you don't have a commitment that you're going to be like a generous partner, your fear, like under duress, your fears will make the decisions for you. And then the fourth is a vision for what community does this partnership thrive within. Power couples do not exist in a vacuum. The thing I've noticed in my research is that power couples are surrounded. And when I say power couples, I mean people who like legit are living relationships that look even better offline than they do online. I don't just mean like a well-branded couple. They surround themselves by other couples that are living and fully committed and intentionally doing partnership as a spiritual practice. So is like creating the clarity of vision about those 4 areas. And once you get clear on that vision, the decision-making process in dating becomes so simplified. It becomes so much like you lose all the friction of the guesswork, all of the confusion. What does this mean? Right. And there's one more thing. Oh, and yeah, you lose all of the noise. And it just becomes a much more, the process you may perceive it as being a little bit slower because like you probably won't be dating online. And I just say that because almost everybody hates dating online. And it's like, well, then you're already starting at an energetic deficit if that's the place that you're doing it. There are great ways to use dating, but if you hate dating and if you hate dating online and you're dating online, you're already misaligned. So good luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But any reservation people have to creating clarity about what they want is scarcity. So often it's like, well, what if I don't know what I want? It's like, well, then you're going to get a lot of, I don't know. Right. Because the fear is like, well, what if I get really clear about what I want and then I never get to have it? If I get really clear about what I want, like there's a deep part of us that knows that like, if I get clear about that, then I have to own it. And then I become responsible for bringing it into being, right? So there's that resistance. And then the other is, it's so funny, like opportunity scarcity, where it's like, oh, if I get really clear, then maybe I'm cutting myself off from all the surprises that like the universe might fold in. And I'm like, that's such a wild distrust of the universe's ability to surprise you. Like, really, like you've gotten clear on visions and then the universe hasn't been like, and all of this, like that's never happened. And like also like once you create that vision, if you're super specific about it, once it comes to fruition, like you get more visions. There's not like a quota. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, that was the one vision you got, right? And you get to evolve it, and like you get to change your mind, and as you learn things about yourself and learn things about other people. So
Because it
that's what
comes back to that energy thing, right? Like where you're directing your energy is what's going to flow into your life. And so if you're connected to that vision and you're super clear, then maybe it doesn't look exactly like that. But I'm sure the energy is pointing in that direction, that it's going to be something along the lines of what you want, opposed to being like, I don't know, well, what are you going to get? More of that. And I think that's really key and really good to remember for anything, whether that's dating or not dating or whatever you want in life. It's like, that's literally what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so okay, this is good, because I love that you said the list and how you said it of how to get clear, because I literally think I spoke in 2 podcasts ago with somebody around a lot of the times in dating or attracting love, you hear create a list and then be the list. And we know that it doesn't work like that, right? Because then you are not attracting the thing that you want to call in. You're actually being that, and you're attracting your reciprocal. So coming now full circle back to your feminine essence that you've cultivated, which isn't that typical one-sided, one spectrum of feminine, which is soft and tender and love light. It is all of the range, all of the things that you get. How do you navigate that then? How do you bring your full expression and your tornado, if that's what's happening, or your storm, or how do you bring all of you to meeting love or dating?
Yeah. So okay, I'll answer this a little bit in practical terms, and then we'll get a little bit more abstract. So it's like practical terms, like let's just say like you're getting ready to go on a date. Like I go full blown Omega, and that can be anything from like taking a long luxurious shower to like dancing, to changing my outfit. Like there's a lot of like, I'm a huge fan of hacking in like external to internal. Like think about like you wear one dress and you wear a different dress and you feel like a totally different woman. Like we are shapeshifters, beautifully so. Like that's one of our superpowers as Omega, or humans who have Omega cores, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I take responsibility for tapping into my own Omega. I don't outsource and be like, well, like if he's alpha enough, then I'll share my Omega with him. No, like I come out of the gate like full blown Omega electricity, what have you, because like that environment is specifically intended for intimacy and connection, and like, are we going to plant some chemistry and romance in this garden together, right? Mm-hmm. And I also put my Omega in charge of the vision, right? I do not put my Alpha in charge of the vision for relationship, for connectivity. That said, once I've done that like ideation with my Omega, I've been like, yeah, like what would just like light me up? Like what is the big, bold, beautiful life in which I feel like a goddess unleashed? And then I leverage my masculine to be like, okay, like what are some intelligent ways to show up for that? Right? Like what are, that doesn't mean that I'm going out, and I used to do this. I used to go like hit on men. I'd be like, hey sailor, what's your number? And then like surprise, ended up in all of these dynamics where I was like the always the initiator, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that doesn't work. But like, let's say I bring my Alpha, it's like, okay, I want to be with a man who has like a really like strong current of leadership, who could like lead me in our partnership. Cause I am like, I'm like such an achiever in my professional life, and in my partnership, that's not the dynamic I want. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to bring like the professional badass intelligence, savviness, what have you. But like, so let's say I put my Alpha. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to get tickets to some events where like really impressive, intelligent, innovative men are going to be. Men who are spiritually woke, right? Like that's Alpha. That's not Omega. You know what I mean? So that's what, so like, it's like letting Omega be in charge of the vision, and then like bringing my Alpha in to like to serve, to like move me forward in like aligned and high vibe ways.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. And let's go with that, because there was something that you said that I was like, I need to come back to this. I forget what it was now. It'll circle back. But yeah, I love that. And I love that I love that you do the thing. I love that you do the thing to cultivate how you want to show up in dating first. Like, I'm all about that as well, right? If I need to be more masculine, like, I'm going to go to the gym and do weights, and then I'm probably going to, be more better in my work and do all that stuff. But if I want to show up more feminine and I don't want to take the lead, then I'm going to sacred dance and I'm going to fall into my body and I'm going to feel that. And that's setting it up for the direction I want to go. I heard something really interesting on a podcast today. And they said your very first meeting with a guy, or initiation with a girl or guy, whatever your preference is, however you, like, if you're the one that takes the lead by saying, "Okay, can I have your number?" or you're on online dating and you initiate the conversation, then automatically you take the pole of the alpha and the masculine for that duration of the relationship. Like, you're now in the lead. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's like, you initiated and now you're screwed, like, because I know people who have, like, they were like really captivated when they like shot them like a message on Facebook, and like that like opened it. So for the women that I work with, they're really I'll just share with you what I counsel with them, and it applies to what you're saying. They're so accustomed to, when there is uncertainty or when there is not direction, to like taking that leadership role. And what they really need is a man who can either like hang at that same level of directionality, or who can even like lap them, right? Who can exceed their capacity. And the way that I encourage women is like, people is you do start the dynamic from the very beginning. I think it may not be like as like micro as that like first interaction, but I like to say like, we're responsible for the invitation and let them be responsible for the initiation. Mm-hmm. So is like, we walk around the world with very well developed energetic boundaries. Like when we're going to Starbucks and we're just like, no, I don't want you random dude to hit on me. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm trying to get my coffee, and we walk around for the most part, like with those energetic boundaries up. And because we don't know that we're doing it, we often walk around the world with them on all the time. The way that this, it keeps us safer, and it also keeps respectful, energetically aware, emotionally present men at bay, because they look at you and they go, "Oh, she doesn't want to be fucked with. I'm a respectful person. He's not going to violate our energetic boundaries." Like, remarkable men don't do that. So it's like, we need to let the men that we would love to connect with know that we're like available for that. The way, my like little secret weapon, this is for everybody that's listening to this, like, this is going to change your world when it comes to dating in the wild, is simply make eye contact and smile genuinely for the time it takes you to think, "I would love for you to come over and talk to me." Hold the gaze, right? And then go back about your business. If you catch eyes again, do it again. But this lets men know, like, she would be totally cool if I came over and talked to her. But you don't then be like, "Oh, okay, well, I gave him the invitation. He's not doing anything about it. Now I'm going to go hit on him," right? It's so important, to like give men the opportunity to initiate. Partly for us to see, like, is initiation part of the way they show up in the world. Like, for the fucking CEOs I work with, like, they need somebody who sees what they want and goes after it. Like, that's just energetic. They need somebody that hangs at that energetic level. There's also like 1,000,001 reasons why a man might not initiate, right? He might be in partnership. He might have like recently broken up. He might just be like too scared to approach you, right? In which case it's like, that's all, like, so it's not to judge whether they do or don't, but is like to take responsibility for letting men that you're attracted to know that their attention is welcome. And that's it. And then you let go. You get unattached to the outcome. Like I said, there's 1,000,001 reasons why they may or may not initiate, but it is important for us to create that energetic connection. Like, we're Omega, like, we are the energy, right? So is kind of like send out that broadcast. And like my clients, like, it's everywhere. It's just so great. Everywhere they go, like, men come to, they're like, "Okay, I don't usually do this, but like, the minute you walked in, I just knew I had to get to know you. And I've actually been trying to build up the courage for like the last 2 hours to like just come talk to you." In parking lots, in bars, in restaurants, at Halloween parties, like, that's, and And what you're doing is you're taking down the defenses. Men who love themselves and men who honor you will not cross the moat, fight the alligators, scale the barbed wire stanchions, you know, climb the walls to get to you. That's crazy. They're looking for someone who is equally grounded in her sovereignty as he is his.
That's so good. And I love, so the biggest tip in that is that eye contact one. That's such a winner. And I want to like dig deeper into the walls and to the energetic walls, because there's two parts to this from my own experience of walking around with like clear walls, like knowing that I've got the walls up, and then the other part to thinking that I've got them down but they're still up, and so getting feedback like you come across unavailable or this kind of stuff, to then coming out the other side and experiencing, you know, getting chased down the street of like, I just needed to talk to you. Because so if somebody's in the middle stage, right, where they feel like they're like confused, like I'm not getting met with any man, or like they're not coming, perhaps because there's energetic walls still up, what can they be doing? Like what are some ways to acknowledge that that's what's happening?
First and foremost is just like keep doing it. The other thing is like you don't only have to practice with men. Like a really great, I mean, who doesn't need more soul sisters, right? Like you can do this with women too, right? And again, like I know like relationships are constructs and genders are constructs. So I'm not trying to be prescriptive that like men and women should be together, whatever. That's just like the niche I serve, as women who want to be in primary partnership with men. But keep practicing. In one of my recent courses, there was a woman who she would do the homework and she'd be like, I did eye contact. And she would like list out, you know, like the 8 things she'd gone to, and she'd make contact. And at the very end, she'd be like, and no men came and talked to me. You know, she was like, it's not. And then like 2 weeks later, after the course ended, because I do like a decompression call a few weeks later, once they've had some time to integrate, it was like, oh yeah, like this one week, like 3 guys just walked up to me, randomly, and like asked, and they all got my number, and I was like, hello, right? So it was like, yeah, like it's gonna take practice. When I assign this homework to my clients, like I had a client who went to a cafe. Specifically, she was like, each man that walks in the front door, I'm going to look up at and smile. She was like, I sat there for an hour and a half and I couldn't do it. She would look up and be like, okay, I'm just like, don't look at me, right? We're so deconditioned to look people in the eyes, and with very understandably so. Every single woman on the planet has been the recipient of unwanted sexual attention. Most, if not all of us have been, all of us have been sexually harassed. Almost all of us, if not all of us, have been assaulted, and many, many, many of us have been raped. And we also like live in a world where we're constantly under an unsafe male scrutiny. Like the patriarchy, right? So like the fact that we have these they're very, very understandable. So I don't want anybody like, oh, like I'm so guarded. Like, please don't beat yourself up, you know, like hearing this. So to understand why they're there. But like, I would just say like, keep practicing, keep making eye contact. The other thing is if somebody comes over and initiates, you don't owe them anything. So I'm going to just say this out loud. So when somebody does come over and then all of a sudden their energy shifts and you're like, whoa, this feels creepy, this doesn't feel safe, you do not have to be in conversation with somebody. You can be like, I was just having fun, like flirting from a distance. I'm going to get back to what I was doing. You're like, thanks for having the courage to come over and talk to me, or something like that. Like, you don't have to do that. So I also want to give everyone listening to this permission. You don't owe anybody anything, especially like not your attention or vulnerability, what have you. So keep practicing. And then also is understand the universe usually has like a 6 to 10 week lag time. Is like you've created all of this like momentum, this like vibrational momentum of like, there are no good men out there. And then like tomorrow you decide to go look men in the eyes and you're like, why hasn't everything changed? And it's like, well, because what you've been manifesting for the last 10 years, the thoughts that you've been transmitting out into matter have been that there are no good men. Like, give the universe a minute to match you. Like, give yourself a minute. Also, like you don't just get to like change your, and I'm not get to, but like, it doesn't work where you just like change your mind one day and like everything's different. Like, usually like you have to show up in that changed mind for a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks. But if you're willing to commit to it for 90 days, your reality will be wildly different within 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like guaranteed, as long as you keep showing up for it.
Mm. Okay, so this is an interesting conversation and topic. There are no good men out there. Or the one that I hate is there's no conscious men. What is this about for women who are in that mindset, have been playing in that mindset? Firstly, what is your thoughts on that? Like, what are you seeing in that in the people you're working with? And then is there a shift that needs to take place?
Yeah. So cool. This is an exercise I do. So, okay. Cool. So I'll just give the exercise. So like I just mentioned, the world has historically and still is a pretty unsafe space for women physically and like sort of universally emotionally, energetically, right? And so it makes perfect sense that we have these defenses. There's a part of our brain called the default mode network. So also I love like a little bit of neuroscience when we can't throw that in there. But there's a part of our brain called the default mode network, and it's the part of our brain that differentiate what information is important and what's not. So right now, like I'm taking in tens of millions of data points about my environment, about the temperature, tech, right? Like through all of my different senses. And yet my brain is like hyper focused on like the couple thousand data points that are here. So that's the part of my brain that's working, that's like tuning everything else out and only seeing this specific focal point. And this is a part of our brain that gets most of its prime directives when we are very young. I think, I'm probably going to misquote this, but I think it's like by age 14. So as if we've had scary interactions with men, unhealthy interactions with men, maybe with like a father figure, authority figure, a lack of men, sexual trauma, what have you, right? Like our default mode network is like, watch out for bad men. So then how this ends up, like we experience it in life, is while our brain's watching out for it, it also means that that's the primary thing we see. So we start to see bad men everywhere. We see them in the news. We see them at work. We see them, the guy who cut me in line at the coffee shops, like that guy on, which isn't to say that there aren't people who are not safe, right? Like I'm not like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but is to understand that like our brain is actually looking for that data specifically and is not paying attention to the other data that it hasn't designated as important. So one of my favorite exercises to like experience how this, and maybe your listeners can do this wherever they are, but as long as they're not driving, is to like look around the room you're in and like really clock everything that's red. And then close your eyes. Close your eyes. Now remember everything that was blue. It's a challenge, right? Because your brain, so let's say like, this is the metaphor, bad men are the red. You can see it. Okay, there's one. Oh, that's kind of a dark red. I'll count that too, right? And
which is a whole other thing in itself.
Yeah, but if you look around the room, like, of course there's green. Did I say green or blue? I said blue, right? Like, oh, there's blue, but I wasn't seeing it because my brain's prime directive was to see red. Mm-hmm. So you can actually engineer this. You can give your brain a new prime directive. And I first experimented with this on myself like 4 years ago, because I heard myself think there are no good men. And I was at a Tony Robbins event and I thought, oh shit. Like, I know how my brain works. That means I'm not seeing, Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, what, like, so I upgraded it from there are remarkable men everywhere. And I got dogged about collecting evidence of that being true. Like, you have to be really intentional about it. Again, like I always say, like, commit to something for 90 days and your whole world will change. And so I started collecting, and you have to be indiscriminate about it. So you have this whole folder that, like, if you're 30 years old, if you're 40 years old, 40 years of evidence for how men are not good or men are not conscious. Like, great. And then you have this like brand new folder that's totally empty of remarkable men. Or people will look around and be like, oh, he's remarkable, but he's married, so I'm not going to count that as data. And I'm like, that's an example of a man being remarkable. Like, so I, like, you take this new folder and you become a rabid investigator of collecting the evidence that you want for the reality you really want to experience. So is like men being remarkable partners, moments of remarkability when that person opens the door for you, right? Like, like maybe they were walking in and they stood and they like held it way longer. Like they could have just walked in, but they didn't. They did that. They took a moment out of their life to be a kindness to you. Maybe I always love like Barack and Michelle Obama, because like every picture I see them together, he's like holding an umbrella over her head, or like helping her out of a car, you know, or like dusting her shoe, like just like this like amazing thing. So I'm like, oh, like every time that happens, I'm like, put that in the folder. And so as you start to amass a new evidence to prove a new reality correct, and you'll start to see the blue everywhere, you'll start to see the remarkability everywhere, but like you have to make that choice. And then once you start to experience the world in which there's remarkable men everywhere, my network of men is like next level incredible. Yeah. And it wasn't that way. Remember, I used to like live in a reality where there are no good men. And now it's like, I am swimming in remarkable men. And once you start to be surrounded by remarkable men, the leap for your brain is not as crazy that there might just be a remarkable man out there for you. Mm-hmm. Right? So like, we don't have to just believe our way into the new reality. We can actually like hack our own nervous system and like cooperate with our own nervous system to make it a more pleasant and a more exciting journey along the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I want to like nitpick at something that you said, because I'm pretty sure this is a Tony Robbins exercise, but when you say like, look for the red in the room, oh, that's maroon, that'll do, or that's orange, that's close enough. That is like another good example of when we go, or perhaps this man is offering me something, or offering me some sort of remarkability that's hard to see. So I'm just going to put him in the shit pile. I'm going to put him in the not enough pile, or not good enough pile. Yet we're misinterpreting, or not allowing ourselves to receive what the gift that they're giving. And I know this example rings true for me, because historically in relationship and in historical ways relating to men, I wouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt. Instead, my story was, they don't know how to love me. Yet my walls were so big that it didn't matter what they were trying to do. They weren't getting in, or I wasn't receiving the gift that they were offering, because was so caught in my head and so caught in the controlling aspect of like feeling like they needed to do it a certain way. So does this come into it too, of like going, well, how do we relinquish this control, or this like idea of what needs to happen into our reality, to actually allowing ourselves to fully receive what they're offering? Because sometimes if somebody's that's very integral and in their masculine can actually be offering us the gift that we didn't even know we needed, but they can see that we need that. Does this make sense?
Yeah, totally. And so I don't know if I said this, but it's like I would be like equally indiscriminate with the new folder of remarkability as you were with the old one of being bad, right? Is like, so it's like that moment, like, yeah, maybe that person like is 82 years old and like obviously not a potential partner. So it's not, the folder isn't like remarkable men who are perfect and could be my partner. It's just remarkable men, or the remarkability of men. And I've also had clients who had just come out of a pretty like abusive or dysfunctional relationship, and like going all the way to remarkable was too far. So I was like, great, let's create a safety folder, like men being safe, or safe moments with men. So you can do this exercise with whatever that stepping stone is that you need, right? So in that, it's like, if I had talked to you in that moment, it might've been creating a folder of like, of men being willing to love me, or men being willing to give to me. Probably I would have done something more like give, so that you could start to observe all the ways that men were showing up to honor and be generous with you. Mm-hmm. Right. So I would get, again, always come back, like you're your best authority, get clear on what is the experience that you need as the stepping stone to the next whatever. And be indiscriminate. Mm-hmm. Like be really generous about what evidence goes in that folder, because you have 30 years that you have to work against, 40 years that you have to work of momentum and inertia in the wrong direction. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's key of like, seek evidence, like what you're looking for right now, you're literally finding evidence for. So you may as well like start to direct and be intentional around what you want to gain, collect evidence.
Yeah, and these are awesome strategies to shift your reality of men. And if it's uncoupled with the personal work, it doesn't matter, right? Like you can build a remarkability, but if like fundamentally you don't trust yourself, like you don't trust your taste in men, like, so yeah. So again, like you can't take any one of these strategies and just like, all right, everything's fixed. Like that's not how relating to other humans works. You can take the strategies, but like the energetic game has to be dialed in as well.
Okay, so let's talk about that then. What does that look like?
Well, so for example, like the undercurrent of what I heard is like, these people don't know how to love me, was a, like there's something going on there with like receptivity.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so you still need to be putting your, either like working with a coach or taking a course, or putting yourself in seminars, or like doing the self-study with the books at home. Like you need to be working on your, this isn't about like putting in an order form to the universe for Mr. Perfect, Mr. Incredible, and then like sitting back and not doing the work to fashion yourself into the partner that is capable of doing the tango with that person. Right. And earlier you mentioned, you said like make the list and then be the list. And I'm like, no, make the list and then get really clear, like what's the version of me that would need to be online, that I would need to be inhabiting, such that that person could not help but be magnetized to me.
Yeah.
That's very, very different, you know, like, cause yeah, anyway, just that opens up a whole host of possibilities. Otherwise we create these boxes like, well, I don't have that like that over 1 million in assets. So I can't be with somebody who like we put all these glass ceilings, versus like that person might want a partner who is like passionate about being an amazing mom and who like doesn't want to work. Like, right. Like,
yeah,
he might be like, I want to spoil my wife, like who wants to raise my kid. Like that's also totally okay. So that's why it's important to like, am I being the version of myself? And that's
why in the episode we unpacked that myth, because you can't be the person because you attract your reciprocal. And so that's where that list was like falling down, but I like the train of thought that you're on. And it also goes for if you're in a couple, not just if you're solo, because there is a lot of things that come up that I'm even seeing in different couples that I know. And it's almost like, well, where's the edge of making sure you're still going within and doing your own stuff and not becoming codependent, or not like, falling into that trap of that staying the same, or projecting onto the other person, or latching on and losing yourself in love and feeling like if I loosen the grip, will I lose the relationship?
Yeah. Is there a question there?
I'm just letting that integrate for a second. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's super important that couples take intentional time apart, period. Like even if you love doing everything together, like you cannot create polarity without time apart, period. Like it's just not gonna fucking happen, you know. I mean, you can, but you're like, talk about trying to push the stalled truck up a mountain. So intentional time apart is super important. And then is this sovereignty piece, right? Is like, are you? There's 3 entities within a relationship. There's partner A, partner B, and then there's the relationship. And all 3 of those parties have their own profile of needs. What's really beautiful about the relationship requires that you both be thriving. Otherwise, I promise you that the relationship needs are not being met, which is what like really kind of erases this whole like martyrdom, self-sacrifice, low vibe shit that a lot of people make up has to be a part of a relationship. But and then the sovereignty piece is really getting clear on your agreements with yourself for like, who are you in the world? Who are you as a partner? How do you want to feel? What are your needs? And are like, ultimately, like, I know that we can create these really like odd defying spiritual partnerships where our partner might be able to tap into what we need, and that will be created usually over time. So until you get that ultimate depth and fluency with the person, like, I'm responsible for getting my needs met, like I'm responsible for making sure that I sleep enough, you know what I mean? And it's really important that we don't outsource that. When we've built that foundation, might our partner notice like, oh wow, she's really depleted, hey honey, why don't you take tomorrow off? Like, I'll take the kids to the zoo. Oh, I hate zoos. Sorry. Like, oh, gross. I'll take the kids to the beach. Why don't like it? You really seem depleted. Like, well, why don't you take the day to just re-energize and do you? Oh my gosh. Right. But that's not actually his responsibility. That's a gift he's bringing.
Yeah.
Like our needs. And so again, like we still have to know what sovereignty is, our relationship to ourselves. Right? Like, am I showing up to be the most expressed, the most courageous, the most generous, the most integrity version of myself that I can be in this moment, or that I can excavate in this moment, right? And without that, partnerships crumble, they corrode.
What's your advice for showing up as your full authentic self?
What's my advice?
Because dude, it feels scary at times. It feels unknown. It feels like vulnerable. Will I still be loved? Will I still be met? Will I still be there? Like, it feels all of these things. So
yeah.
what's the advice?
I think that I probably talk about this for like 30 years, but I think maybe the what's coming through, sort of the most salient thing, is be prepared to be disappointed, be prepared to fuck it up, be prepared to be clumsy, like be prepared for failure. Like, yeah, it is going to be vulnerable. You are going to have your heart broken. You are going to be let down. But it's not like I'm authentic. Like, you being your fully expressed self should not be contingent on other people. It should be contingent on your agreements with yourself. Right. So, I went on a date recently and got my feelings hurt. And I caught myself being like, ha ha ha, tease, tease, tease. And I was like, oh, interesting. What I teach is it's never too early to tell the truth, right? Like, your person will appreciate your willingness to entrust them with uncomfortable conversations. Are they going to be graceful at it and perfect at the first time? Probably not, right? And I realized in that moment that I was like, oh, I started to kind of feel like, when like tears, like you can like feel them coming from all the way back here. Like, I was like, oh, I'm like getting that kind of like, and I like slowed down. I was like, okay, like this is the moment to tell that truth. And like, I did not in that moment trust that person would feel it, hear it, see it, honor it. But I said, I'm not feeling seen, and I'm not feeling understood. And he didn't handle it perfectly. It was a bit clumsy, but he responded for sure. He was like, oh, are you triggered? Which, like, I was like, ah, right? But that was the language he had available to him in that moment of thinking. And also for him, this whole fear profile of like, oh no, I just ruined the date with this woman I like. Right? So I just stayed present too. But that's what I mean, like being fully expressed. Like, he could have said something terrible in that moment, but I don't tell my truth because this person is perfect. I tell my truth because that's my agreement with who I am in the world. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I feel like I was having this conversation with someone recently around like no more filtering who I am showing up as, because it either leaks through in a messy way, it either becomes suppressed and it becomes resented, or it comes out later in the relationship. And then it's like, wait, I didn't sign up for this. Who is this person? And so we have really no choice but to tell the truth. But we were having a really interesting conversation before we hit record again around the discernment that comes with sharing your vulnerability, sharing your heart. Because I think that's really important to add, is that not everyone straight away has access to your vulnerability or your most vulnerable self or your tender parts of your heart. So how do people discern between how much they share and how much they express? And where's the line between that and suppressing or filtering who you are?
Yeah, that's a good question. The way that I see this, like the discernment piece is I think that a way that will be really relatable to your listeners is like, think about family. So I'm sure a lot of them are going through their personal development journeys, and many of them have families who think they're baby crazy right now, you know, or who don't get it, or like they'll go home for a holiday and they get triggered right back into the same old bullshit dynamic with mom and dad or their brother, right? So it's understanding, like, there's a couple things going on. One is trying not to make people be someone they're not, right? So we go home and we're like, I discovered this thing, I'm going to be truthful. And we like hand this truth to that person, and then they drop it. And then we're mad at them for dropping it. And it's like, and like, you know, they're a truth dropper. Like, you know, they're not trustworthy with your vulnerability. Like, what do you, right? So it's like making sure that, like, when you're sharing your truth, is there a gift in it for both people? Or are you doing it because, like, well, it's important to me to express my truth, right? And then wanting somebody to show up differently than the way they've showed up your entire life, right? So context is important. I would say when you're first meeting people, that's a really great time to show up, like, truthfully, right? You don't necessarily have like a pattern of behavior that has really shown you who this person really is. You're actually in a co-creative process with them of discovering, right? And kind of like interviewing, like, who are you really? Who are you really? Who are you really?
Truth dropper.
What?
Are you a truth dropper?
Yeah, are you a truth? Are you gonna drop my beautiful baby truth on the ground and
truth?
And maybe they are, right? But that's exactly what you need to learn about them if you're entertaining them as a possible candidate for a life partner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I don't know if I said this on the thing before the recording or since we recorded, but is the pattern I'm seeing with my clients is like the never ending honeymoon phase, because they're usually, when you opt into a relationship, there's this honeymoon phase, right? Because there's a person you opted into who then starts to disappear about 4 months in, 6 months in. When you are a radical truth teller, the version of the person that you're opting into is the actual person. So there isn't a loss of someone. There isn't like a loss of a fantasy. You actually like had the required conversations. You showed them your darkness. You showed them your discomfort. You showed them your clumsiness, your inabilities, as well as all the good things. And by the time they've opted into their partnership, they're actually opted into you. And so there's no need for the honeymoon phase to end, because the person they're actually excited about is you. Right?
Yes. Like,
so that's why in dating, it's like, I say it's never too early to tell the truth, because what we tend to do is we withhold truth, and then because we're trying to be palatable or likable, versus like offering ourselves our truth as a gift, and then letting the person decide, like, is that someone that they would be over the moon to co-create life with? If it's not, baby, bless them out of your path, you know, like, not your person, and vice versa. And also too, this like filtering thing is you have to radically love your truth first. So oftentimes what we'll do is we will be judgmental of our own truth, and then we'll hand it to somebody else and then be like, they weren't nice to it. It's like, well, like, let's take a little more responsibility, right? And so the way that the energetic that I teach, and the way I like to think of it, is offering your truth, or giving your truth as an offering at the altar of the connection. So I'm not telling you my truth to be like, can you deal? I'm not telling you my truth so you can prove me wrong about something. I'm telling you my truth because I'm actually going to take a chance on us, and I take a chance on you being someone where we are trustworthy with an uncomfortable conversation.
And as a tangible example, does that look like, playing on what you were saying before, does that look like you felt tears emerging from the back of your head, and your truth was to say, I don't feel seen, I don't feel understood? But if you weren't, and you decided, well, if I share that truth, will they still like me? So instead, I'm fine. Push that back down.
I'm fine. Yeah. Or the other extreme would have been to be like, oh, this guy's an asshole. Versus assuming positive intent. Like, it's like, oh, maybe they misunderstood me. Like, I could have been like, that guy's an asshole, and then left him and like, I'm never seeing him again. Versus like, we didn't even have a conversation. He didn't, because I'm sitting there joking back, like, how the fuck is he doesn't have a context for my energetic rhythms, the way that I feel, like feel to him in the field. yeah. And like immediately, like he went from being like, ha ha ha, to like he got
Whoa.
there. Yeah. He was like, uh-oh, like you're like, you're in headlights. Oh, are you triggered?
Oh, wait.
And I was like, ah, like, and of course, like the part of me that was activated was like, don't tell me I'm triggered. And I was like, he's not telling you that you're triggered. He's asking, you know? Yeah. And it's like, it's fluency and it's nuance and you have to practice, but yeah.
You have to practice. That's it, isn't it? You have to practice, and you have to be willing to continue to show up to your truth if that's something that you want to show up as. And it's messy. You're a hot mess a lot of the time, and it's messy and it's hurtful. And I love that you said, yeah, you're going to get your heart broken and you're going to get dropped. And it's all of those things that bring us gifts of, cool, like this is how I historically would respond, and now this is what I'm doing instead. Oh shit, look at that growth. Like I've had numerous things happen to me this year where historically I would create all of the stories and buy into the story of not trusting men and doing all of that stuff. But I've gone, oh, like this is how I'm choosing to react differently. And now I'm consciously going to have a different conversation about it, or share my truth, or share my needs and express how I feel. And it radically changes how everything shows up. And so I think it's a constant practice on deciding to be in that work, and it's brave.
It is. And like, what other life are you going to lead?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like your listeners are not here to walk through the world half alive, half dead. Like they're here to juice every like morsel of like spiritual growth and spiritual contribution that like each day gets to have. And what's so cool is when as more and more people approach relationship from this space of intentionality, the next generation is going to be amazing, but is really, and you and I have experienced this sort of via one degree of separation, as well as like to a certain degree in our personal lives, but is like what is it when we actually like nominate our relationship to be like a lifelong guru, to be a lifelong catalyst for growth? What happens when we show up? That's where like the devotion and stuff comes into it. And I genuinely believe, and this is going to be true of your listeners, if they resonate with you at all, like this is going to be true for them, is that is the relationship that their souls are craving. Like they don't want a comfortable relationship. They don't want someone to divide the labor with. Like they want a spiritual growth partner for life. And we all know like spiritual growth is a lifelong journey, and and I also think that nothing less will do for us.
Yeah.
Like we're so committed to that extraordinary speed of growth, that extraordinary expression of growth, that like a lot of the reason why you see all these amazing people and they're single is because the only, like you said, the only relationship models they see out in the world are ones that would involve them settling. And they have a deep contract with themselves not to settle. So that's where we're at.
Oh, where can people go to find out more about what you're doing in the world and how you're helping incredible women find epic love?
Yeah, like hottest spot to do that, Instagram. It's trulychosen.co, trulychosen.co. That's our handle. And yeah, we do advice all the time. And if you want to get updates on upcoming events and programs, or just like simply have unconventional, refreshing dating advice that like takes into the account that you're extraordinary and that like only an extraordinary relationship will do. Yeah, that's the hottest spot to get that.
Love it. And I'll link that up as well. And one thing I want to end on is like, what is something in your life right now where you feel most alive? Like what lights you up?
Oh, I am in sacred partnership with my business right now. Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means, I got really connected to the vision and the mission over the last few months. So before it was like, oh yeah, I want to be a coach and like help people and like make money doing it. Like, oh, I'll play small much. and then I really got tapped into the mission, which is like a comprehensive overhaul of dating culture. nationally and internationally, so that these are the kinds of conversations that like everybody is having. Like, this is like, I want intentional dating to be as common, if not more common, household language than talking about love languages. Everybody in their own home knows their love languages now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then also got really tapped into what do the children who grow up in this new paradigm, what are they empowered and capable to create for the planet, when what's modeled for them is relationships that are respectful, deeply loving, expansive, yeah, and by all accounts, like truly formidable in their connectivity, is like those children, their bandwidth becomes so available for innovation and like, you know, saving the planet and contributing to the planet in meaningful ways. And yeah, so when I got connected to that mission, the like steps forward with regards to just kind of like the inner workings of my business really started to come into clarity. So I feel like I'm a little bit more along for the ride. Like, it's all there. Have you seen that Prince EA video? Not everybody dies, but not everybody lives.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that? Yeah, like I feel like all of a sudden, like I finally like felt the dream having me versus me having the dream. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, like I was like, I'm just along for the ride. Like, this isn't my thing. This is a thing happening through me.
Beautiful.
So,
well, I really want to honor the work that you're doing and the way that you've stepped out of playing small, because it's literally burst through my screen and I see it and I see you and you're shining so bright and you're playing big and you're making massive impact and you're sharing such a valuable message, and you're also allowing such a safe place for transformation. So I want to freaking honor the work that you do, and the way that you honor other women is really remarkable. So I'm going to put you in my remarkable folder.
Yeah, totally. And the men I interview. So
thanks so much for playing. I've seriously loved having you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was such a high caliber conversation.